INFPs are purpose-driven, and if they find a mission in the world, they're highly intuitive, emotionally aware, allows them to go out and accomplish some amazing things. But because of their idealism, they also easily fall into the archetype of perfectionists or caretakers. By the way, if you're not an INFP, go check my profile for the other archetype breakdowns. I make lots of videos about this. Due to INFP's strong sensitivities, they can read people around them quickly and expertly. But as a result, they sometimes interpret shifts in other people's energies as being their own fault. So it might be they're talking to a friend and their friend for a moment get quiet. An INFP will sense that change and wonder if they did or said something wrong, even if it might have had nothing to do with them. Another superpower that INFPs have that sometimes can turn into a weakness is the fact that they're capable of sensing multiple sides of a conflict easily. It means they're great mediators in solving other people's problems, but the fact that they're highly empathetic also results in them ignoring their own needs in the process because they're so focused on reading what other people are going through. Third thing that INFPs need to watch out for is because the fact that oftentimes they're more sensitive, they become conflict avoidant because they don't want to create the emotional pain in others since they sense that pain more. And as a result, they oftentimes avoid speaking their truth or setting boundaries with people that they really should. And remembering that everyone treats us the way that we teach them to treat us, they oftentimes get the worst end of the deal or sometimes even get taken advantage of. And in the worst situations, they might even end up self-abandoning. So if you're an INFP, you need to figure out what your purpose is first. Because if you're designed to create a better world through that mission, you might end up giving away so much of yourself to everyone else that you have nothing left to give. Find a mission that you believe in your purpose in life first and fight for that relentlessly so you don't end up fighting everyone else's wars. And if you don't know what that is, work with a mentor or a coach and ask them to direct you. But most importantly, realize that your gifts are there, but if used incorrectly, they can sometimes become your biggest weaknesses. ISTPs are fair and logical problem solvers. They're also quite adventurous, which means that in a crisis, they're great to have around because while everyone else is lost, they might end up being the most calm. And because of the fact that they're adventurous, they end up also being some of the most rebellious people you ever met. By the way, if you are not an ISTP, make sure to check my profile for the other video breakdowns, which I do fairly often. Now, this is the problem, is that the ISTP can oftentimes fall into what we call the soloist archetypes because they oftentimes become quite isolated. Making and relating with INFP, which would be a kind of a strange experience because as soon as you tell them how you feel, instead of relating to you on an emotional level, they'll generally try to fix everything around you. They go into what we call mechanic mode rather than relating mode, which is why some people see ISTPs as being difficult to connect with. They see the world as a set of logical problems and solutions, but that's not how people and human beings work. I can't tell you how many people I've coached a business with an ISTP co-founder and somebody going, he's great at strategy and very reliable, but he can't communicate with the staff. And this is because ISTPs also comes to become a little bit avoidant when it comes to confrontation. Not because out of fear, but because they don't really like or know how to handle people's emotional variabilities. They get annoyed by people's expression of feelings, especially what they see as negative feelings, sadness or anger or annoyance, because it's not logical to them. And it ends up playing out more of a distrust to how other people feel, and they think that people are trying to control them when in fact they're just expressing their thoughts. Because of the strong logic, a lot of people tend to think that ISTPs are being emotionally disconnected, but that's not true. The struggle happens, they start taking on strong perfectionism habits because then they become a little bit overly judgmental of themselves and overly critical of themselves. They have a tendency to hold themselves to a much higher standard compared to everybody else, and as a result, they can feel stuck because in that pattern of thought, they're not used to trying to confront it, and then they feel like a little bit more frustrated that they keep repeating the same pattern. If you're an ISTP or you're in a relationship with one, just realize that they need a little bit more space sometimes. They need nice, clean boundaries, and once they have that space, they're generally speaking be really easy to contain and work with. But just realize that they don't necessarily communicate the same way that you might need them to. So ESFJs are the ultimate dependable people persons. They have a secret power when it comes to seeing the best in others. You know if you're an ESFJ if for no particular reason, you just start feeling good about yourself. By the way, if you're not an ESFJ, go and follow my channel. You're going to see a lot of other videos where I talk about this kind of breakdowns. Now, ESFJs are oftentimes at risk of falling into what we call the archetype of chameleons. Chameleons have a superpower of fitting in almost everywhere they go. And it doesn't matter if they're at a business meeting or a rave, they just seem to fit right in because they're really good at reading the energy of people around them and becoming just the right person that you need. Unfortunately, this might also mean that they'll change their personality to please whoever it is they're spending time with in that moment. And funny enough, this isn't that because they're trying to be fake. They're not trying to manipulate the people, even though it does often seem like they're usually in control of the people around them. The skill comes in the fact that they shapeshift from person to person, but the shadow side is that if they find themselves kind of continuously leaning into that, they end up being a little bit of the puppet master of the group. Now, if they hear this and they think, oh, that sounds great, remember that trying to control people doesn't work on the long run, not just because it won't backfire, but because you end up losing your true self in the process. And as with most chameleons, the risk of fitting in everywhere is that you kind of fit nowhere. Nowhere that's truly yours. Nowhere that you could be seen for who you truly are, accepted and loved for who you truly are, faults and all. You become so good at fitting into other people's expectations that you never really own yourself. And the truth is, you are incredibly lovable, faults and all, and you deserve to be accepted for who you truly are, or for who you truly are, no matter what. So if you're finding yourself falling into this chameleon pattern, it's really important that once in a while that you step forward and try to get a sense of who you genuinely are. And if you're starting this conversation going, well, I don't even know who I'm supposed to be, well, you might be on the wrong path. ISFJs are highly sensitive and aware individuals, not to mention deeply caring. They have a special ability to read people and support other people emotionally, which also means that they're highly at risk of fitting into the archetype of rescuer or protector. By the way, if you're not an ISFJ, make sure to check out my channel and follow for other videos like this. ISFJs have a strong sense of duty because that's how emotionally strong they are, and they're more likely than not to have people come to rely on them emotionally. You want an ISFJ on your side because not only are they incredibly capable of supporting you, they're also very generous people. Some of the kindest people I know are ISFJs because they're willing to drop everything to defend somebody who they see as being vulnerable or in need of support. Now, this is the problem. Because ISFJs are so good at taking care of everyone else around them, they oftentimes do what we call self-abandoning. The problem is that they see other people as being emotionally in need, so they keep their own negative feelings inside instead of feeling like they are burdening other people. And they oftentimes neglect themselves as a result. The other issue is that ISFJs don't like hogging the spotlight. They won't stand for injustice, but they won't care as much about fighting for recognition at the end of the day, which is ironically another sort of injustice. As a result, they don't get the credit that they deserve because they tend to feel guilty at receiving praise. As a matter of fact, receiving love might be way more difficult for ISFJs as a result. Ironically, even though ISFJs are incredibly sensitive to other feelings, they struggle to voice their own and their needs. They'll oftentimes sit there feeling silently stressed or overwhelmed, but if you ask them about it, they're usually the first one to say, I'm fine, I'm good. And if you want to hear what that sounds like, check out my video called 5 Ways to Feel Fine. If you know an ISFJ in your life, make sure to give them lots and lots of love. Give them recognition and positive feedback, even if they're going to fight you tooth and nail to reject every nice thing you have to say about it. They'll hate it, but they need it, and more importantly, they deserve it. ESFPs, oftentimes known as the entertainer, are fun and exciting to be around. Only problem is they're a perfect match for the inner child archetype of the life of the party, and oftentimes will end up playing the peacemaker role in their friend circles, which may or may not be a good thing. ESFPs are really fun to have around in your friend group. They seem to have the uncanny ability to start a party wherever they go, and they love people and everyone seems to love them back. They're highly enthusiastic, but once you cross one, they'll generally never connect with you again. But here's the thing about being the life of the party, is that when the party ends and there's nowhere where your mind's to go, this is where ESFPs often struggle, because often when they're left alone only with their thoughts, negativity and worry start creeping in, and they have a hard time navigating out of it. And they're more than likely to come up with general truth that will allow them to avoid having to face their problems head on, and sometimes end up becoming a bit of an escapist. Now, this has a lot to do with the fact that they're not great with structure, and they end up procrastinating their problems away or try to brush everything underneath so they don't have to look at it. Now, that being said, ESFP's superpower includes their high sensitivity and observational skills when it comes to other people. So they can pick up on something that is wrong with other people before the person may even know it themselves. As a result, they're really giving care and advice to people who are struggling, as long as they don't end up becoming the caretaker in their relationships, in which they put other people's needs before their own. This is a really good superpower to have.